Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. I'm Cole Philpott. So as summer gets closer and the school year comes to an end, well, I get really excited because no school and baseball season gets going, which is a lot of fun. But it's not always great for the fish tanks because as the storms roll in, and a lot of times we lose power. And that's not great just because it can kill the fish and it's not great. But today I'm going to be teaching you what to do when the power goes out and how to survive it and make sure no fish die and make sure they're still happy. So you're watching The Fish Bowl. So let's get right into it. But first off, if you haven't seen the last video, definitely go check it out. Because I explained what to do if your betta fish has fin rot or if any fish is getting torn fins or nipped at, and I taught you what to do. But Joe is doing much better and it's getting better day by day. I think I figured it out. I think the frogs are actually doing it. And what I've done is I've started to increase feedings just to make sure that they're not hungry, and that's why they're doing it. So I'm really filling them up and really making them fat, and it seems to be working. Also, I'm doing water changes almost every other day just to make sure that the water is perfect. So that's just definitely what I recommend. But let's just get right into why we're here. So when the power goes out, there's a couple of things that you need to focus on: temperature, air, and those are the two main things. Definitely focus on that. If it gets really hot where you are, like I'm in Maryland, and I'd say it gets pretty hot. Here it's like even upper 90s, mid 90s in the hot summer, but now it's like around 80, which is pretty good and makes it really easy. So when the power goes out, you're not going to have a heater. So if it's cold, I'd recommend wrapping the tank in blankets or like a weather blanket just to make sure the heat stays in. But if it's warm, I'd recommend leaving it unless it gets really hot. If it's like over probably 110, that would make the tank like 85, 86, 87, somewhere around there, and that's pretty hot for most fish. So what I would do is if you had a sump, that would be the best scenario because you would be able to take colder water and slowly pour it into the sump so it could dissolve before it goes into the tank. This makes sure it doesn't shock the fish, and that works out really well. Also, what you can do is a water change with colder water, but not like much colder water because that's just an easy way to shock the fish. And I highly don't recommend, but do not do this. I think it's just a really bad idea to put an ice cube or ice cube bags inside the tank. I remember I did that when I was a new beginner. Looking back on it, I feel like that's a really bad idea just because it's really easy to shock the fish, and with big temperature swings, most sensitive fish won't be able to handle it well. So sure, you can get by with it if you have really hardy fish, but otherwise, wouldn't recommend that. Other ways to cool it down is make sure you keep the light off. You'd be surprised. That heats it up, especially if you have like one of those fluval like LED strips. Even though they're cooler than like incandescents and things like that, they still produce pretty much, they do heat up the tank. So I have this just small LED, and I'm pretty sure that does absolutely nothing. But if I were to lose power, I wouldn't put it on a battery. I wouldn't put it on timers, and there's no need to mess around with that. Keep the light off. Don't even look at the fish. Don't feed them because you have no filtration. Don't do anything. If it's cold, wrap it up. Just put it away. And once the power comes back on, then you can address the issues. So next is aeration. If you have really sensitive fish, or if you have a heavily stocked tank, like downstairs, I have my guppy tank. I have a good amount of guppies in there. Even though I've moved it from multiple tanks now, it's probably still 50, 60 guppies in that 20 gallon. It is a 20 long, so there is more gas exchange because it's a bigger footprint. But even still, you need aeration in those heavier stocked tanks. So you can buy is one of those battery powered air pumps. I recommend buying from Aquarium Co-op. Great place. Really love that. And that just works out for me. Put an air stone in there, get the water moving, and you even can move it tank to tank. So if you're like breeding and you have a ton of different tanks, just put it in there for an hour, move it to the next tank, move it to the next tank. But for most times, I found that that's unneeded. I only usually lose power for maybe, 3, 4, 5 hours, somewhere around there. And most of the time, the fish are fine. Don't even worry about that. And it's only when you get into days, like 2 days, where you really start to worry about that. And the main thing that you lose is your bacteria. Because there's no oxygen and there's no filter running, you pretty much lose all the filter bacteria. So that's the best way to kill your fish, I think. not the best, but that's the easiest way to kill your fish. If you leave your filter plugged in, as soon as that power kicks back on, that's going to start churning water through it. And if you have like a canister filter that holds a lot of bacteria, when all that dies off, that's just going to produce ammonia. And you definitely do not want that pumping into your tank. So if the power goes out and you don't think it's going to be back on for a while, probably unplug it. Even if it's off for like 3 hours, you're probably okay as long as it stays a little wet. But if it's out for days, you have no chance of keeping your bacteria. Basically, all the bacteria you've left is in the tank. And even so, that's a bare minimum just because there's very little oxygen left. So keep the water moving and just keep your filter off. I cannot stress that enough just because it's so easy to kill your fish like that. And last, feeding. Do not feed your fish. Because there's no filter going, pretty much all you've left is the plants, the gravel, and whatever decor you have to hold the bacteria. You have no sort of mechanical, you have very little biological, and you have no chemical. I don't usually run chemical anyway, but even still, you have nothing there. So don't feed your fish if the power goes out. I just could not stress that enough. That's putting more ammonia into the tank. And, I guess if you have really sensitive fry that need to be fed, I think your best option is to feed them very light, just tiny, tiny, tiny bits over a longer period of time, just to make sure it's not a big influx of ammonia. Also, if you're able to do a water change, I just recommend maybe 5-10%, just because the water's going to be colder because you can't heat it up. Or maybe you can. Can you heat it up? Does the hot water heater stay on when the power's out? I have no idea. But if you're going to do that and it's colder, do small water changes. And don't feed. Keep the light off. If it's cold, wrap it in a blanket. If it's really hot, add colder water to the sump. Or what you can do is smaller water changes to add colder water back in. But it's pretty easy to survive a power outage. Just make sure you're prepared and make sure you have an air stone. That is super crucial. Except, I don't have one. I have had one and it broke, but I don't have one at this current moment, and I need to get one just in case. And I recommend everyone has it. But if it's under 3 hours, don't even worry. If it's under 5 hours, I wouldn't even worry. Just keep watching your fish and make sure everything looks okay. If you have a really big issue, that's when you gotta take action. But as I said in the last video, don't rush it. Don't just go, oh, someone's acting weird, water change. Someone's doing this, drain the tank. Don't do that. Make sure you watch, make sure you know what you're doing, and don't add medications. There's nothing to do in a power outage. You don't want to treat for ick. You don't want to treat for any other things while this is going on, because the fish are under enough stress. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But that's pretty much all I got to say for this. I've kind of just been rambling for the past couple minutes, and that's all I got to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, remember, hit that like button. And if you really loved it, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. As always, you've been watching The Fishbowl.